Have you ever noticed how your horse seems to know a storm is coming before you do? How they might suddenly get spooky or energetic when there's not yet a cloud in the sky? You're not imagining it. Your horse actually has incredible sensory abilities that allow them to detect weather changes long before humans can even perceive them. Understanding these abilities is the first step to managing those crazy weather behaviours. Let me take you through your horse's weather detection system, and it begins with barometric pressure. As a storm front approaches, pressure starts dropping. While you notice nothing, specialised structures in your horse's inner ear immediately detect this shift. Their brain registers this as an alert signal, triggering a cascade of physiological responses: elevated heart rate, heightened awareness, and readiness for action, all while you're still enjoying blue skies, completely unaware of what's coming. But it's not just the pressure they sense. Horses can hear infrasound as low as 14 hertz, compared to humans who can only hear down to about 20 hertz. This means they can literally hear storms approaching from miles away, when we can't hear anything at all. Think about it. Your horse might be listening to thunder rumbling 30 miles away, while you're completely unaware that anything is wrong. There's something even more fascinating happening too. Growing research suggests horses may actually detect changes in the electromagnetic field that precede weather events. Because of the high iron content in their blood, they might be sensing these electromagnetic shifts that happen before lightning storms. This could explain why so many horses become particularly anxious before electrical storms specifically. And we haven't even talked about smell yet. When the wind picks up before a weather front, it carries scents from far away that we can't detect, but are completely obvious to your horse. Smells that might indicate danger or predators suddenly appear, putting them on high alert. On top of that, when humidity changes, it dramatically alters how scent molecules travel through the air. This can suddenly introduce new smells or intensify existing ones in ways that can trigger strong reactive behaviours in horses. Their survival historically depended on detecting these subtle scent changes. So yes, your horse really does know the storm is coming before you do. When they start acting up for no reason, they're responding to real environmental changes, completely imperceptible to humans. Their bodies and senses are literally alerting them to approaching weather that might be hours away. This isn't your horse being difficult. It's their early warning system kicking into high gear. Understanding this is your first step towards working with these sensitivities rather than fighting against them. So why such dramatic reactions? Seemingly extreme behaviours are actually deeply ingrained survival adaptations that kept their ancestors alive in the wild. Wild horses have a critical safety advantage: the herd. So when one horse tenses up at the weather changes, they immediately look to the others for confirmation of danger. If the other horses remain calm, the alert horse usually settles. But your domestic horse exists in an information vacuum without this crucial feedback system, causing their anxiety to spiral rather than resolve. Let's talk about storms. Lightning and flooding presented legitimate survival threats to wild horses. Their seemingly irrational fear of storms is actually a perfectly rational survival response, seeking higher ground to avoid flooding and staying away from lone trees to avoid lightning strikes. These behaviours kept horses alive for millennia. Wind creates particularly challenging conditions for horses. Think about it from their perspective. Wind carries distant sense of potential predators. It obscures nearby sounds, which increases their vulnerability. And it creates unpredictable visual stimuli like moving bushes or debris. Every rustling branch could be a mountain lion ready to pounce. And every piece of debris could be a predator on the move. When your horse experiences these weather cues, their flight response immediately kicks in, flooding their system with adrenaline and cortisol. Even if they mentally recognise they're safe in their familiar paddock, their body is chemically prepared to run at a moment's notice. Those hormones have real physical effects, increasing heart rate, heightened awareness, and the muscles are now primed for explosive movement. Essentially, Weather changes disrupt the stable sensory environment horses rely on to detect threats, putting them in a state of hypervigilance. Their entire nervous system is saying something's changed, danger could be near, stay alert. So what we perceive as an overreaction is actually a fine-tuned survival response that kept horses alive for millions of years. Your horse isn't being dramatic when they spook at wind-blown plastic. They're responding to a genuine biological imperative that says unpredictable movement could be a predator. This isn't bad behaviour, it's evolutionary programming at work. Understanding this biological basis transforms how you'll manage these behaviours, moving from frustration to effective strategies that work with your horse's natural instincts rather than against them. Now, beyond day-to-day weather changes, you've probably noticed that your horse's behaviour can change dramatically within the seasons. Many riders talk about spring fever or how their horses get extra spooky in the autumn. These aren't just coincidences or old horsemen's tales. There are actual biological processes happening in your horse's body as the seasons change that directly affect their behaviour. The primary driver behind seasonal changes in horses is daylight hours, which scientists call photoperiod. As days shorten in the autumn or lengthen in the spring, these light changes directly influence your horse's melatonin, cortisol, and reproductive hormone levels. Research shows these hormonal shifts create periods of behavioural instability, especially during those transition times between seasons. Look what happens in spring, for example. As daylight increases, melatonin production decreases, which triggers a cascade of other hormonal changes. For mares, this kicks reproductive cycles back into gear after winter dormancy. Even geldings experience hormonal shifts that can make them more energetic and sometimes a little bit more reactive during this transition period. During spring and autumn, horses also undergo significant coat changes. And this is not just a cosmetic issue. The biological processes of growing or shedding a coat requires significant energy and can create actual skin sensitivity. Studies have shown increased irritability during heavy shedding phases in spring and autumn, particularly in horses with thicker coats. It's similar to how humans might feel irritable when they have an itchy rash. The constant skin sensation is genuinely distracting and uncomfortable. Seasonal temperature changes require metabolic adaptations too. During these transitional periods, horses may experience energy surpluses or deficits that can manifest as behavioural changes. You might notice lethargy one day as their body works to adjust, and then hyperactivity the next, as their metabolism fluctuates. Horses have a surprisingly narrow comfort zone of roughly 5 degrees Celsius to 25 degrees Celsius. When temperatures suddenly swing outside this range, their bodies work overtime to maintain core temperature, creating physiological stress that directly affects their behaviour. There's also the diet factor. In spring, new grass contains extremely high sugar levels. The sugars literally change your horse's behaviour as if they've had an energy drink. Combine this with increased daylight and you've got a recipe for excitability. Here's how the spring grass mineral puzzle affects behaviour. First, rapidly growing grass accumulates high potassium levels while containing less magnesium. When your horse consumes this imbalanced forage, their nervous system becomes really excitable due to the insufficient magnesium. This directly translates to the jittery, hypersensitive behaviour you can see. And that's why targeted magnesium supplementation during these transitions can transform a nervous horse back to a focused partner. So, when your normally calm horse suddenly starts bucking and playing in spring, or gets spooky when the leaves start falling in autumn, well, it's not random behaviour. Their entire physiology is undergoing a complex seasonal shift influenced by changing daylight, temperature, diet, and their internal hormones. These biological processes explain why seasonal transitions consistently coincide with periods of unpredictable behaviour. even when the daily weather seems fine. Understanding these seasonal patterns can help you anticipate changes before they happen. Each of these biological systems we're uncovering gives you another piece of the puzzle, helping you predict and manage your horse's behavior during weather changes with confidence rather than confusion. Here's a surprising discovery. Domestic horses actually tend to be more reactive to weather changes than their wild counterparts. You'd think wild horses would be more sensitive since they're directly exposed to the elements, but the opposite is often true. And the reason for this reveals a lot about how our modern horse management practices might unintentionally be amplifying weather sensitivity. To understand why domestication increases sensitivity, follow what happens in a stabled horse's sensory world. First, they spend hours in a consistent sensory environment where nothing really changes. Then suddenly, they're led outside to a world of shifting barometric pressure, changing light, and perhaps wind or humidity. This sensory leap is jarring, like stepping from a dark room into bright sunlight. Bristol researchers documented this effect by tracking how horses with 24/7 turnout gradually adapted to weather changes, while stabled horses showed dramatic reactions to exactly the same conditions. The way we exercise our domestic horses often creates problems too. Many domestic horses have irregular exercise that don't align with natural movement patterns. In the wild, horses move consistently throughout the day, covering miles while grazing. Our domestic horses often stand in stables or small paddocks and then have short bursts of intense exercise. This energy management mismatch can create explosive behavior during weather changes, as natural energy that would have been used for movement builds up. There's a painful irony in our rugging or blanketing practices. We cover our horses with the best intentions. We want to shield them from discomfort. But this well-meaning protection prevents their bodies from developing full winter coats. The consequence? Well, these horses often experience greater fear and anxiety during temperature changes than horses that are allowed to grow natural protection. Their bodies never learn to adapt to the very conditions we're actually trying to protect them from. And it's humbling to realise that our care might sometimes increase their vulnerability. Domestic horses often have limited exposure to gradual environmental changes too. Think about it. Wild horses experience the full progression of a developing storm from start to finish. Our horses might be in stables during bad weather, and they might only experience fragments of changing conditions. Research demonstrates that controlled exposure to varied conditions improves the horse's resilience over time. This is why horses raised in varied environments tend to be less reactive to weather changes. Without the calming influence of a natural herd, a single horse's weather anxiety can escalate rapidly. There's no group wisdom to moderate their response. There's one more factor that creates a particularly vicious cycle, and it's us. As your horse becomes more reactive in changing weather, we naturally become more anxious about handling them. Your horse instantly detects this emotional shift through your breathing, your muscle tension, and even your heart rate. This confirms their suspicion that something is truly threatening, amplifying their anxiety even further. So then we respond with more tension, creating an escalating loop that can transform manageable weather sensitivity into dangerous behavior. So the very management practices we thought we were protecting our horses is actually making them more sensitive to weather changes. But here's the good news. By strategically incorporating elements of natural horsekeeping into our modern management, we can develop that same weather resilience seen in wild herds, even in performance horses. And I'll show you exactly how in just a moment. Understanding these management factors is the final piece we need before diving into the practical strategies that will transform how your horse handles weather changes, giving you the confidence to ride, train, and compete regardless of the forecast. Now for the part we've all been waiting for. What can we actually do about all this? If your horse's weather sensitivity is based in biology and evolution, is there anything we can do that's actually going to help? And the answer is absolutely yes. Scientific research has identified specific management strategies that can significantly reduce weather-related behavioural challenges. And these go well beyond just lunging them before you ride or keeping them inside during the storms. Let's start with the foundation strategy that transforms weather sensitivity: consistent exercise through changing conditions. And here is how it works. Regular physical activity first helps regulate your horse's energy levels, preventing that buildup that fuels explosive reactions. Next, it creates predictability in an otherwise changing environment, something horses crave. Finally, it builds physical fitness that reduces overall stress responses. This three-part process explains why horses maintained on strict exercise schedules regardless of weather show dramatically reduced reactive behaviours. Diet management presented a challenging puzzle. Many owners mistakenly increased feed when the weather changes to keep the horses warm, unwittingly adding fuel to an already fire-prone situation. The breakthrough came when research revealed that feeding a low-sugar, low-starch diet dramatically reduces reactivity by preventing blood sugar spikes that amplify stress responses. This is particularly important in insulin-resistant horses, but helps all horses during weather transitions. This doesn't necessarily mean keeping horses inside, but rather ensuring they have access to consistent barn temperature, humidity control, and shelter options. The key here is choice, giving the horses the option to self-regulate their exposure to the elements often resulted in much more balanced behaviour. There's some interesting emerging research on supplements too. Limited but promising studies suggest certain adaptogenic herbs like ashwagandha may moderate stress responses during weather changes. While more controlled studies are needed, this is an area worth exploring if your horse shows extreme sensitivity. Training approaches can make huge differences too. Exposing your horses to a variety of weathers is something often overlooked because we don't like getting wet, or we are super lucky and we have indoor riding facilities. Think about it. All my horses get ridden in all weathers as long as it's safe, so I know that if we're at an event or out hacking and some unexpected weather comes, I don't have to freak out. Professional riders consistently report that giving horses a job that occupies their mind, like transitions, patterns, or obstacle work, can effectively redirect weather-related anxiety during needed training sessions. Perhaps using lateral work to help horses focus during windy conditions at competitions. The mental engagement seems to override some of the environmental distractions. The most compelling evidence comes from multiple equine facilities that have horses with regular turnout in variable weather. They develop greater resilience over time. A 3-year study found these horses displayed 60% fewer stress-related behaviours during weather changes compared to those that were kept inside during bad weather. Again, you have to make the right decisions to protect your animals. By implementing these strategies, consistent exercise, strategic feed adjustments, environmental consistency, and targeted training techniques, you'll work with your horse's biology rather than against it. This transformation can be remarkable. What once seemed like random, frustrating behaviour becomes predictable and manageable. And instead of dreading weather changes, you'll approach them with confidence, knowing exactly how to help your horse navigate them successfully. What was once your biggest training challenge can become just another manageable aspect of horsemanship. The science reveals not just why your horse acts crazy when weather changes, but how you can help them through it, transforming both of your experiences for the better. Make sure you subscribe to see more videos like this. Thanks for watching.